Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Equalizer. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I really liked how this episode broke down and just everything that went down. Obviously, the main focus of the episode is Vi is on jury duty to a case where a guy named Tim is accused of raping and murdering a woman named Sarah, and a lot of the evidence points towards him, and most of the jury's kind of hung up on the fact is of like, yeah, they think he's guilty, it's been a couple days, but Vi's always been the holdout because she's like, certain things about this case don't make sense, like there's holes, and there's just, because as a jury, it's like, right, we're supposed to be like, detach our feelings from it and whatnot, and it's supposed to be purely looking at the facts as they've been presented, but for her, it's like, the fact is, their whole point is, are we sure that he's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt? But there's reasonable doubt for Vi because there's holes in the the evidence and stuff like that. And she's even pointing out to some of the jurors, it's like, right, how can we talk about we're looking solely at the facts? Can't we give him the benefit of at least remembering the facts because they start getting some inconsistency? Because like, oh, he had a cut on his arm. It's like, no, the cut wasn't on his arm. It was on his hand. Facts are important. And if we're mixing up little details like that, what are the details might we be forgetting about or mixing up too when it comes to this particular case? Because basically the evidence comes down to Tim had an argument with his fiance, Morgan, about something, because basically he lost his job and his ex ended up offering him a job and he didn't tell Morgan about it, so they had a fight. He left, and I really like that being a thing for Vi. I like legitimately that the jury stuff was like super really good, because I love that it is a thing of, I don't think you could ever fully devoid yourself, because a lot of aspects of your life, your view on things is always going to be diluted by your own personal experiences. I don't think you could ever fully cut yourself away from it. And I think it's so beautifully illustrated. I was about to say orchestrated, but illustrated in this between the interactions between everyone on the jury, because everyone comes with their personal experiences. So like one of the ladies says like, right, the thing that Tim supposedly drugged Sarah with, it's like, wait, but that doesn't make any sense because that particular thing isn't dissolvable. And it's almost like, wait, you knew that the entire time? And she's like, yeah. It's like, but why didn't you say anything before now? It's like, well, because all the other evidence lined up to say that he was guilty. But we kind of see later on, we'll talk about it more, but it seemed like she already had it made up in her mind he was already guilty anyway, so it's just like, right, this thing might be a little inconsistent, but whatever. But it's like, right, this particular drug that was in her system, we find out is like an anxiety pill or something like that. So it's not dissolvable, so he wouldn't have been able to give it to her. There's also the element of, all right, so his boss that fired him was white, and the dude, what was his name, Howard or whatever, was like, right, he went and found a woman that was white like his boss to strangle and kill. But she's like, whoa, but Vi's point was he had an argument with his fiance. He was really upset and he was looking for a victim that matched that. Why wouldn't he kill someone that looked like his significant other? The fact is that, like, oh, how could he not know where he was? It's like, right, he was angry, and, you know, have you never gotten so angry you don't remember where you were? Like, because he was just so caught up in the moment and didn't realize where he was. He claims that he never walked into the bar, even though there's, Sarah's friend or roommate, Olivia or something like that, saying that she saw him. And the entire time you have Robin working the case, because she picked up a little bit from Vi, but Vi is doing what she is legally bound to do, not talk about the case. I think you can be vague about it, but I think you can't go into too much details. I think even vague stuff, luckily Robin has the resources, Harry, to look through the case and be able to look through all the active cases to be able to find out what particular case that Vi is a jury on. So, Robin goes and talks to different people. She ends up talking to Morgan. She ends up talking to Sarah's friend, because Sarah's friend didn't point, I thought that was, this case, once again, also, not just the jury stuff, but just the case in general, what makes it complicated and so interesting is there's so many things, so many things had to compile together to make this case what it was. I mean, there was just so many little things on top of each other. Basically, Sarah and her friend / roommate were at a club or at the bar or whatever, but it wasn't their scene. There's a lot of finance bros around, and Sarah was getting a little anxious being around such a crowd. So her friend gave her an anxiety pill, one of her anxiety pills. Wait, it's like, whoa. So you knew the anxiety pill came from you and that no one dosed her, but why didn't you say anything? Because she was like, right. She was like, and she was worried that people would blame her. It's like, right, if I hadn't done what I did, then my friend wouldn't have gotten, maybe my friend wouldn't have been in a vulnerable state. And, and that was almost a thing of, it was her own guilt because she's like, right, am I responsible for my friend's death? But also at the same time, it is like, she didn't want to preconceive notion of that, she believed that people might blame her. So she was like, right, but I saw the guy, it's like, yeah, but you yourself had already taken one of your anxiety pills, plus you had probably been drinking too. So can you honestly say that you were in, she's like, yeah, but it was a guy. And even she has to go, right? Because she's not sure. And the guy who she actually saw at the bar talking to Sarah ended up being one of the finance bros. Turns out he actually has an alibi for Sarah's murder because he was actually with his colleagues at the time. So he has an alibi, but he never came forward because it's dude, I'm a black guy. I was the guy that her friend saw. If I had turned, like, I would have been on the chopping block. But it's like, yeah, but you have an alibi. But for him, it's like, it doesn't matter. I'm a black man in a situation where a white woman was raped and murdered. Like, do you think they're going to give a shit about that? But it's like, yeah, but now you have a perfect alibi, but because you're not stepping forward, someone else is on the chopping block. And even in the end, that dude still never stepped up. He's like, right, if you want to help that guy, Tim, that's on you. You're going to have to do it yourself. That's super messed up because he didn't want to take the chance of putting him, like, you have a perfect alibi. The very least you could do is come forward to be like, right, the person she saw was me. I'm that person. She mistaken me because it's a club. She was like a little bit away. That was even Vi's point in the jury. It's like, how can we be sure that's who she saw? Because she even said, I'm going to butcher the terminology she used, but basically mistaken one person for one black person for another. And Howard or whatever is kind of like the begrudging old man being like, oh, you're just making this about race. She's saying like, oh, this whole thing about, oh, all white people are racist. And she's like, no, it's a thing that happens. And one of the other jurors that kept giving her a lot of pushback about, like, right, you must have a lot of free time on your hand. Don't you have a husband to get back to? It's like, I'm not married. Yes, you are. You told me you're married. And the other lady's like, no, I'm the one that's married. And Vi's like, so we had this whole conversation. We've been at this jury thing for 2 weeks. You mistake me for this other woman. I'm not saying it's just the way our brains work. She's not trying to say like, I was like, oh, like, if you mistake, like, and not 100% saying, like, you're 100% racist, but it's just, like, our brains will fill in certain gaps. And that ended up happening with Sarah's roommate / friend. It's like, she saw a black man, and she just assumed it was Tim. Like, her brain filled in the rest of the gaps, because it's like, right, this is the guy that was seen exiting the building, and it's like, right, her brain filled in the gaps of like, right, that has to be the same guy that was talking to her at the bar. So, fascinating. But over the course of it, you do see that slowly but surely, one by one, Vi's like questions, because everyone who was so sure from the beginning slowly starts going like, wow, like, Vi's bringing up some good points, and I'm starting to doubt whether this guy is actually guilty or not. And so, I forgot there was this one person on the jury, she got something from, what was it, Instagram or something? There was something she learned, I don't remember what it was exactly, that ended up changing her perspective on, well, she had a certain perspective, and it's like, oh, how do you know so much about this particular thing? She's like, well, I kind of learned it from, like, Instagram or something like that, so... And the sad thing is, Vi even started doubting herself at one point during the case because, once again, I think the guy's name is Howard. He starts saying, like, right, you're making this all about race. We should be focusing on just the facts itself. He's like, right. And then you have Vi being like, right, that's kind of a little bit of a revisionist history because it's almost ignoring a lot of the complication, the race circumstances that can be involved in this case because he is a black man in this situation, and this case can be seen from a certain lens. But Howard kind of turns it against her and says, like, right, Howard, do you know that you're not being blinded by your own bias? That when you look at Tim, you're not, seeing someone else, and we're going to end up letting like a rapist or murderer go because of that. And even Vi had to question that because she's like, right, am I looking at Tim, when I see him, am I really seeing an innocent person? Or am I just looking at every innocent black person, in particular black man, that is locked up? But Robin, having done her own investigation, believing like, no, there's more to this, having found punching holes slowly but surely into the prosecutor's case, that she lets her Aunt Vi know without going into it too much, is like, right, trust your gut on this. So Robin even tried to get the DA to like help with this situation, but with what the case was, there was no stepping in for the DA because it's like, right, there's some holes in it, but the evidence still lines up enough for Tim to be seen as a person responsible. So the only way to really break this case would be to find another suspect, because that was also the thing. The cops looked into this case because even Dante was looking through. He's like, right, the cops who investigated are on the up and up, and they did their due diligence. That on a normal basis, a case like this would be handled this way. That it's not 100%, but there's enough there to be like reasonably enough. It seems like this person is responsible, but that also rubbed Robin the wrong way a little too. That it's like, right, because the cops also, like, after 2 nights, they ended up finding Tim, even though it's a situation of they didn't have any other suspects and no one else to talk to. But a lot of the breakdown in the conversations that I really thought was fascinating was, obviously a part of this conversation is Tim left Sarah's building at midnight to catch a cab. It's like, right, that's like 30 minutes or something, because it's like, right, one of the neighbors who was a witness, they heard screaming, and they said at 11:30 because that's when their show started. So they believe that, right, Tim had enough time to kill Sarah, clean up the scene, and then make it to his taxi. But then we got, like, once again, I think his name is Howard, ended up talking about one of the games he saw because he remembered vividly what he saw. But then Vi was like, whoa, but there was overtime, right? It's like, yeah. Well, what happens when there's overtime in a game? Shows that are normally programmed at another time, which, what is this? A CBS show. I mean, it's a network show, but CBS has played sports and stuff runs over from time to time. And what ends up happening, shows have been pushed back. So this is almost like the perfect network for this particular show to come on to really like talk about that. But it's like, right. So the game went overtime. So that person assumed that they heard the scream at 11:30 simply because that's when their show normally starts. But if the time was pushed back, who knows when it could have been. It could have been after Tim had already gotten into cab light, so it could have been after midnight, or even if it hadn't been midnight, even if it was like let's say it ended up 11:50, that's still still enough time for him to rape, murder, and clean up a crime scene in time to make it to his taxi. And it's like, that the lady who was kind of against it initially was kind of like, even she was like, right, I gave her reason without, and home dude was still ended up being the last one, but even she's like, right, can you 100% say that you believe he's guilty? And the dude was like, honestly, no, I can't. So I love the shifts in perspectives and situations in this case of just how that happened. And I think it's so beautiful that Vi, at the end of the day, yes, maybe she came into this with her own circumstances, like, right, maybe she was more inclined because, I don't want to see another young black man locked up. Yes, that was, maybe it started from that spark, but it doesn't take away from the fact is, all she asked everyone to do was look at things from a different perspective. And everyone else did throw in perspectives, but then you line up some of the evidence. It's like, yeah, but there's inconsistencies. And once again, their job is to determine whether or not this person is guilty or whether there's even a hint of reasonable doubt. And over the course of the deliberations, it was proved there was a reasonable doubt that Tim was responsible. So, and Robin and the team were doing their investigations, and she had Dante's help. Yes, he was reluctant to get involved, which I loved his side of things in this episode too, because Dante's still questioning everything about, he's not ready to go back to being a cop, but he wonders about, like, he looks at, like, he has a law book and stuff, and, like, Robin's like, oh, thinking about being a lawyer, and he's like, honestly, and this applies to so many people, like, right, what your family does sometimes might be enough to make you run towards something or run away from it. And he basically says, maybe I ran towards and away from being a cop because of my dad, or because of his family, because his mom's a lawyer. What? I don't remember now. I think his mom's a lawyer and his dad's the cop, if I'm not mistaken. But he's questioning, right, did I ever really know myself? Because it's like, right, the decisions I made when it came to my career, was it just 100% influenced by my family? And did I really actually know what I wanted to do? And do I really even know myself to really make those decisions? And I thought, I wanted to latch onto it because I couldn't remember, but Robin said something that was so poignant that I thought was so fascinating. I think it was essentially things of like, right, we affect things and things kind of affect our decisions, and we affect, I don't know, I'm butchering it, but there was something very specific she said that I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I wish I had latched onto it more, because I was thinking like, oh, at the time I heard it, I was like, oh, that's really good. But Dante does end up helping in the end, because he ends up talking to his lawyer friend, who is Tim's representative. And he'd ask her, like, how do you, like, despite how the system is set up and stuff, like, how do you keep doing what you're doing? Because she's like, if I don't, then who will? But without having the, like, if I'm not the one in this position, Tim won't have someone who will fight the bat and go above and beyond for him. And that also plays a little bit later on in the episode when she says, like, right, the fact of the matter is, with things being what they are, a lot of people are going to look at, jumping ahead, Tim getting a not guilty verdict. People are going to look at it as like, oh, he's scapegoated, like he was able to convince a jury and he gets away with what he did. And the cops aren't going to really put in 100% the effort necessary to really look for the killer, because they're going to assume this guy was a killer and he got away, rather than being like, maybe there was someone else. But Dante has the perspective, because he was working with Robin, that there was more going on. Because that guy who was the witness that he said he saw Tim get in a cab, I was like, from the beginning, I was like, well, we got introduced to him. I was like, what's his name? Christian. I was like, that guy seems a little suspect. And especially because, like, I thought the angle they were going to go with, it's like, oh, he was like, right, the lights messed up. It's like, right, because the tenant, not the tenant, the landlord kind of cheaps out. So I thought the argument was going to be like, oh, like, did you really see Tim? Because I thought she was going to suggest, like, right, the light was off, so you can't really say for sure you actually saw Tim. But it's like, I guess the lighting from outside would have still been enough. But that's what I thought was going to go. But then it's all the way back. And then I like the episode kind of throws a wrench where you're like, maybe Tim isn't as innocent as we think. I'm like, whoa, are we about to do a switcheroo? But it's like, no. Because her question for Tim was, he said that the reason why he went into that building is because it looked warm and inviting. That's why he decided, because it was cold outside, to like relax in there and clear his head. But that place's lights are motion censored. So I was like, what's up with that? Like, maybe what does that mean? And so Tim lied. It looked kind of cold and dark, so why'd you go in? He did talk to Sarah. Like, he helped her into the building because she seemed out of it, and she went upstairs. But he knew that if he admitted he had any interaction with her, that he was going to look guilty. He saw what was going on here. He knew, like, what it was going to be like. So that's why he's like, I didn't even tell my lawyer the truth about this. He didn't tell anyone because he figured even if his lawyer knew that evidence, then maybe it might be a situation of someone else might likely find out about it, so that's why it would have just made him look more guilty, so that's why he didn't say anything. So once again, it is a situation of, there are just so many little dominoes, so many things are just wrong place, wrong time, because even he's like, right, if I hadn't fallen, cut my hand, if I hadn't gotten that argument with Morgan, none of that would have led to all of this. And it's just like a confluence of everything happening. It's just like, on so many other pieces to this puzzle had to come together, and it worked out for the real assailant because it all fit this narrative perfectly that make him the perfect scapegoat. But then Robin was like, wait, you tripped over some trash. They rewind it, and Christian's place is like supposed to be like, he was in the basement or whatever area. Either that's where his place is or whatever, that where he saw Tim from. But all the trash was sitting out then because trash gets picked up Tuesday, and that was Monday night Sarah was killed. So there's no way he would have been able to see Tim because all that trash was piled up in front of that window. But when you look at, from Sarah's room, you have a perfect view. So that's how he was able to identify Tim to be the perfect scapegoat. He got lucky that so many other factors contributed to making Tim look guilty. It's just he lucked out in that regard. He didn't know for sure that was going to happen. But they also look into Christian's past. He was part of a fraternity 10 years ago or something like that, where there were some sexual allegations, but that was kind of all sealed away, I think. No, they're not. NDAs were signed, and then there was another situation where he was in a building where a woman was murdered or something like that, and but the case was still open. It's like, this guy's a really bad guy with everything that he's involved in. It's like, you seem like such a scummy human being. So. But some other elements to this. In the end, 9 out of 10. Well, let's go with 98% of the jury is like, right, not guilty, except for the last person. And Vi kind of realized, like, right, she's coming at this with her own biases, her own circumstances because the juror was like, right, it doesn't matter. He's guilty. I know guys like him. He can't just get away with what he did. And she's like, right. He's not your ex or whatever. She's like, you don't know what you're talking about, lady. The fact is, nothing you say is going to change my mind. And Vi's like, I'm not going to try and change your mind. All I'm asking to you to do is speak your truth. If you wholeheartedly believe that he is guilty, I'm not going to ask you to change your vote. But what I am going to ask you to do is, honestly, vote with your conscience. Is this what you truly believe? Can you honestly say that he's... And obviously... a hung jury is better than a guilty verdict, but the problem is it's not a not guilty, and so that means we're going to have to go through this again with a new jury, and another jury won't luckily have a Vi on it who will be able to say hey, maybe we should look at things from a different perspective and just look at everything and just kind of ask questions. But at the last second, she changed her mind, and the entire jury said not guilty, so it luckily all worked out in the end. And so I thought that was great. And I even loved that Robin at the end congratulated Vi. And Vi was just kind of like, no, at the end of the day, I just wanted to ask questions. And it's like, right. And Robin's like, that's all we need is people who care enough to keep asking questions, to get towards the truth. And I thought that was kind of a beautiful message for the episode. So, but at the very end, because Dante ends up deciding to get his badge back. He ends up talking to the DA, and it's like, right, I'm going to get justice for Sarah's family because no one else is going to look into this investigation the way, they need because no one's going to, because once again, everyone's going to believe, Tim did it, he got away with it. So Dante comes back, and we see at the end of the episode, he's questioning Christian, so that guy's about to get it, so good. And luckily, Tim gets to go back to his wife and child. Well, like I said, I think that's his fiance. I don't think they're married. I think they're engaged. But it's right, he gets to go back to his family, and his child won't have to grow up with him behind bars and stuff. So I thought that was, like I said, things could have, if just one thing was different with the jury, because they were all certain of him being guilty. Vi was the only one that was kind of had her doubts, and so if it wasn't for Vi, this could have gone very differently, and they probably might have never caught Christian, or maybe they would have, but it would have been well after the fact, when he'd already been sitting in jail for years, for all we know. Because there was, once again, no DNA evidence. It was just pure eyewitness statements, and that kind of led him to being where he was. Him being at the scene of the crime, but once again, not necessarily at the scene. He wasn't caught at the scene. He was caught at the building. The scene was her room, her apartment, where the murder and everything happened. But he was in the building, yes. So that's also what played a role in that. So, but everything else was just pure eyewitness testimonies and such. So I thought that was kind of a great story, and I love how they handled that, and obviously what this means progressing forward for Dante's story as well. But I also love another side angle to this episode is the continuation of where we left off last time with Delilah having to lie to her dad about Robin, and Robin, talking to Mel about, like, right, it kind of sucks, which Mel's like, yeah, I lied, I had to lie to people about Harry being dead. It's like, yeah, but you're an adult. I'm not asking her, but I'm putting my teenage daughter in a situation where I've always told her not to lie because lying is bad and being honest, but now she's in a situation where she's lying for my sake, and even, but Mel had made the point that lying is necessary sometimes, and it is, but she doesn't want her daughter to kind of get that misconception that it's okay to lie, and Robin ends up talking to her at the end of the episode like, I'm sorry that I put you in this position. You say it's no big deal. It is. The fact is, lying sometimes for someone you care about is, but you got to also make sure it doesn't blow back in your face. So I am, but you got to sometimes ask yourself, because sometimes your lies can do more harm than good. And in this particular case, Delilah's saying, like, she kind of has a perspective of maybe telling that maybe lying causes less harm, because if the truth came out, maybe it would do more harm, because her dad would probably use that as an excuse to get Delilah away from her mom. And I brought this up that I feel like the storyline could easily, especially with the, I almost want to say Damian Monroe, but I'm like, no, that's Leverage. God, I'm blanking on home dude's name now. God, I can't think of it off the top of my head now. The guy that killed Bishop this season. The other guy. So, my thought last episode, or maybe the episode before last, was that, he's going to pop up in the story, and he's going to bring more danger to Robin's life, and then, like, it's going to be fuel and ammunition for Delilah's dad to use it to try and get sole custody of Delilah type of situation. I mean, like, hopefully everything's amicable and he's just going to look after her in her best interest, which maybe that's his justification for it, but once again, he's got his own secrets. But, so I think Delilah's kind of looking at, like, right, it can turn into a nasty, like, custody situation for her, so maybe she realizes how much issues and infighting that might cause, so... But she's like, I will take your words for it. I am listening to what you say, Mom. But she does also point out, but Dad asked me if I felt safe, and I said, yes, I did. And I wasn't lying when I said that, and I thought that was beautiful. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where the next episode takes us as we continue with that, but also continue with Dante's story, as well as where everything ends up taking Robin and Mel and Harry as they go forward. So... But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.